Sometimes the quietest towns hold the loudest secrets. The streets may sleep under soft lamplight. The houses may hum with stillness, but if you listen closely, there's something else there. Beneath the calm, a whisper of what once was. These are not the stories found in books or told by campfire light. These are the ones that never left, the ones the wind still carries through the trees. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavy and the world fades to quiet, come closer. Let the darkness tell its tales, softly, slowly, like the turning of an old page. For in the small towns where time stands still, even silence remembers. If these words carry you closer to sleep, let this channel stay by your side too. For here the night is gentle and the stories will always find their way home. It began, as many stories do, with a whisper, a soft thread of rumor winding through a quiet Pennsylvania town where the pines grew tall enough to touch the sky. Locals spoke of Old Pine Road in low voices, as though even the wind was listening. At the far end of that narrow dirt path stood a house that had forgotten how to be alive. Its paint had long since peeled away, its windows clouded like tired eyes. Yet somehow, even in its decay, it seemed to breathe. No one built near it. No one stayed long enough to ask why. But those who'd passed by at dusk, delivery men, wandering children, lost travelers, swore they saw her. A woman in white standing behind the second-floor window, brushing her hair with slow, deliberate strokes. The same woman who had been buried decades ago. Her name, the townspeople said, was Margaret Ellery. She'd lived there in the late 1800s, a painter who never left her home after her husband's sudden death. For years, neighbors heard her talking to him through the walls, her voice soft and trembling, like a prayer that refused to end. When she finally died, the house sealed itself in grief. The shutters closed, the doors jammed shut, and vines crept up its sides like green veins reclaiming their own. For years, no one dared to enter, until one October evening, a group of local teens decided to test the legend. The air that night was colder than it should have been. The moon hung low, pale and swollen, lighting the house like a secret exposed. They parked their car at the edge of the woods and crept forward, flashlights trembling in their hands. Each step toward the house felt heavier, as though the earth beneath them didn't want them there. When they reached the porch, the first thing they noticed was the silence. Not the normal kind, the hollow, waiting kind. Even the crickets had gone quiet. One boy, Jason, pushed open the door, and it groaned like something waking from a long sleep. Dust swirled through their flashlight beams like tiny ghosts, and the air smelled faintly of lilac and old perfume. Inside, time had stopped. The furniture still stood, draped in yellowing sheets. A tea set waited on the parlor table, half covered in cobwebs. Paintings lined the walls, each one of the same man. A soft-eyed gentleman in a dark suit, his expression patient, loving, endlessly watching. They split up. One pair climbed the stairs while the others explored the main floor. Upstairs, the hallway stretched long and uneven, the wallpaper peeling in slow curls. At the far end was that window, the one everyone in town knew too well. And just beneath it, a vanity. A silver hairbrush rested there, glinting faintly under the beam of a flashlight. Jason picked it up. It was cold. Colder than anything in the house should have been. And then faintly he heard it. Music. A fragile melody, far away but unmistakable. It came from somewhere below them, drifting like a memory through the walls. He motioned for the others to follow. They crept down the narrow stairs, hearts thudding in unison. The sound led them to a small door under the staircase, half hidden by an old curtain. When they pulled it open, a rush of cold air spilled out, and there it was, a music box. It sat on a wooden shelf, covered in dust, the tiny ballerina spinning slowly to a tune that didn't quite finish. The melody caught and repeated again and again, like a voice caught in a loop. Maybe it's battery-operated, one girl whispered, though even she didn't believe it. Jason leaned closer. The box wasn't new. It was carved wood, hand-painted, its hinges rusted. It shouldn't have been playing at all. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw movement. Just a flicker, a soft shift in the glass of the mirror hanging on the opposite wall. He turned his flashlight toward it and froze. There she was, Margaret Ellery, standing behind them in the reflection, her hair long, her face calm, her eyes impossibly sad. She wasn't looking at them, but past them, as if still searching for someone who'd never returned. Her lips moved, whispering something too soft to hear. And then, in an instant, the light flickered, and she was gone. The music stopped. They ran, out the door, down the porch, through the trees until the house was nothing but a dark blur against the moonlight. None of them spoke. None of them ever did again, not about that night. But the house still stands. And some say if you walk by at the right hour, you can still hear the faint sound of that unfinished song drifting through the trees. And if you're quiet enough, you might see her in the window, waiting for someone who never came home. And so as the night deepened, her story became part of the forest, a quiet echo of love that refused to fade. The first thing you notice about Duskmill Creek is the quiet. It's the kind that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels expectant. The kind of quiet that belongs to places the world has forgotten. A single dirt road winds through the Oregon pines, ending at the ruins of an old lumber mill. The water still flows beneath the broken bridge, slow and dark, carrying fragments of old wood and whispers of what used to be. It's said that on certain nights, when the fog rolls in low and silver, a light moves along the creek. A small, golden lantern swaying back and forth through the mist. Locals call him the Lantern Man. Some say he's searching for something. Others say he's warning those who wander too close. But no one really knows. Not anymore. A century ago, Duskmill Creek was alive with sound, the hum of saws, the rhythm of river wheels, the laughter of families who built their lives from timber and sweat. And among them was a man named Elias Crow. He was a mill foreman, known for his quiet, kindness, and his habit of walking home with a lantern long after everyone else had gone. He had a daughter, Maeve, bright, curious, with a laugh that could lift the weight from any day. The town loved them both, until one autumn evening when the river rose too high. The storm came without warning. Rain fell like glass, the air electric and heavy. The workers tried to tie down the mill, but the current tore through the foundations. In the chaos, Maeve disappeared. Some said she'd gone looking for her father. Others believed the river simply took her. By morning, the mill was gone, and so was she. Elias never left. He searched every inch of the forest, every bend in the creek, lantern in hand, calling her name until his voice was no more than a rasp. Days passed, then months. The town moved on, rebuilt what it could, but Elias remained. They said they saw his lantern through the fog, drifting along the riverbanks long after he should have been gone. When winter came, they found the lantern near the water. Its glass cracked, the wick burnt down to nothing. His body was never recovered. Years turned to decades. Duskmill faded from maps, its houses swallowed by the woods. But the light never left. Even now, hikers tell stories. They say the fog grows thicker near the old bridge, wrapping around you like cold breath. And then, through the haze, a glow appears. A warm, flickering lantern swinging gently in the dark. Sometimes it moves toward you, sometimes away, but if you follow it, they warn, you'll never find your way back, one traveler. A photographer passing through in the 1980s claimed to capture the light. His story was quiet, almost embarrassed. He said he was drawn toward the glow, thinking it was another camper. But as he stepped closer, he saw a figure, a tall man in a long coat. Head bowed, lantern in hand. The light illuminated his face, just long enough for the photographer to notice the water dripping from his hair, his clothes soaked through as if he'd just walked out of the creek. Then the light went out. And when the man looked up, there was nothing human in his eyes, only reflection, like water under moonlight. The photograph he took was later developed. The trees were clear, the fog dense. But where the lantern should have been, there was a shimmer. A small, bending streak of light that seemed to move, even on paper. People say Elias's spirit still searches for Maeve, his lantern guiding him along the same path he walked 100 years ago. Others believe the light isn't sorrow, but devotion, that he isn't lost at all, only waiting, patient as the river itself. Sometimes, when the fog drifts over the creek and the woods fall silent, you might see a glimmer far off in the dark. A soft, golden pulse swaying side to side. And for a moment, the world feels older, as if love, even in its most haunted form, still remembers the way home. And so, as the mist curls and the forest sighs, the lantern swings once more through the night, carrying With it, a father's promise that never died. In the heart of a sleepy village called Red Hollow stood a chapel that seemed to exist between worlds. The villagers called it St. Miriam's, a modest stone church, surrounded by wildflowers in the day and by whispers at night. Its roof sagged under years of rain, its stained glass dulled by dust and sorrow. Yet something about it remained beautiful. It had the stillness of a memory that refused to fade. For generations, no one questioned the midnight bells. They had always rung, soft at first, then deep, filling the hollow valley with a trembling hum. The sound was mournful, almost human. Those who heard it said the notes seemed to stretch longer than they should, as though time itself was caught inside the echo, and yet there was no one to ring them. The church had been empty for decades. Long ago, St. Miriam's was the pride of Red Hollow. Every Sunday, the pews overflowed. Children in clean linen sang hymns while their mothers lit candles along the aisles. At the front stood Father O'Neill, a man of quiet strength, whose voice carried warmth like sunlight. He cared for the town like it was his own family, visiting the sick, comforting the grieving, always with a steady calm that made people believe in gentleness again. But one winter something changed. The snow came early and never seemed to stop. The roads froze, and hunger crept into the town like a slow-moving fog. With it came despair, arguments, theft, and blame. They said Father O'Neill began to speak differently then, his sermons turning from hope to warning. He spoke of repentance, of voices that visited him at night, urging him to ring the truth before it was too late. At first, the villagers dismissed it as exhaustion, but soon the bells began to ring long after services had ended. Midnight, 2, 3 in the morning. Each time the sound grew heavier, echoing down the hills until even the river trembled. No one dared to confront him. And then, one stormy night, the bells fell silent altogether. When morning came, the snow had stopped. The church doors were locked from the inside. A few townsmen forced them open, only to find the chapel empty, except for the rope, still swaying gently. Father O'Neill was gone. On the great brass bell above them, someone had carved a single word with trembling hands: "Forgive us." The villagers searched for him for weeks. They combed the woods, the frozen river, the graveyard behind the chapel. Nothing, only the quiet remained. But then, exactly 7 nights later, the bells began again. At first, the villagers were too afraid to listen. The sound came low and clear, as though someone had just finished praying. Some claimed it was the wind, others something worse. But one woman, a widow who had lost her son that same winter, walked to the church steps and stood beneath the tower. The bells rang above her, steady and deliberate. She said she felt warmth wash over her face, like sunlight in a snowstorm. From that night on, she said, her dreams changed. She saw the Father there, kneeling before the altar, whispering names of those who'd wronged, those who'd hurt, those who'd given up. He wasn't angry, he was sad, tired, as though he carried the guilt of everyone who ever prayed there. Over the years, St. Miriam's crumbled. The roof caved in, ivy climbed its walls, and wildflowers grew through its floor. But the bells, they never stopped. Even when the tower collapsed in a storm, travelers still swore they heard the ringing, always at midnight, always the same melody, slow, pleading, unfinished. Those who visit Red Hollow today still speak of it with reverence. They say if you stand where the church once stood and close your eyes, you can hear a faint chime in the wind. And if your heart is heavy, it will grow louder, as though answering something inside you. No one knows who or what rings them now. Some say it's Father O'Neill, still asking forgiveness for a town that lost its faith. Others believe it's not a haunting at all, but a mercy, the sound of sorrow turned into prayer. Either way, the bells continue, not to frighten, but to remind that some souls never leave their sanctuary, even when the walls fall down around them. And as the last echo fades into the night, the valley of Red Hollow exhales, peaceful again, yet never truly silent. There's a quiet stretch of track just outside the town of Marin. Falls, a place where the earth seems to hum, even when no one's around. The rails are rusted now, half buried in wild grass, their wooden ties soft with moss and rain. To anyone passing through, they look forgotten. But when the fog rolls down from the hills, something strange happens. The air changes. The ground begins to tremble, faintly at first. like a heart remembering how to beat. And then, the sound comes, a distant whistle, long, low, sorrowful. The people of Marin Falls call it the ghost line. They say it belongs to a train that vanished in 1923, a luxury express, that never reached its destination. Its name was the Silver Veil Limited, a masterpiece of polished oak and brass, bound for the coast with 43 passengers aboard. On a cold November evening, it left the Marin Falls station right on time, its lamps glowing like stars in motion, but somewhere between the hills and the river bend, it disappeared. The railway logs show no crash, no debris, just silence. Crews searched for days, then weeks, combing the valley from end to end. But there was nothing, no sign of the train, the passengers, or even the tracks where it should have passed. It was as if the Silver Veil had simply been swallowed by the night. For years, the story became a cautionary tale. The company called it a clerical error. Locals called it a curse. They said the conductor had ignored a warning, an old telegraph from the next station that read, "Stop the train, bridge unstable," but he'd never received it. Or maybe he had and chose not to believe. Decades passed. The town aged, the station closed, and the memory of that night faded like old smoke. Until one evening in 1961, a farmer named Daniel Lowe was walking home from his field when he heard it. The whistle, faint but clear, drifting through the fog. He thought it was a trick of the wind until he saw the light. It shimmered in the distance, moving across the valley. A line of warm, golden orbs gliding through the mist, as if suspended in air. He watched as the shape of a train emerged, translucent, glowing faintly. The silhouettes of passengers visible through the windows. A woman adjusting her hat. A man reading a newspaper. A small child waving. And all of them, perfectly still, as though frozen in a moment that never ended. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. No sound, no smoke. Only the faint smell of coal and rain. Others began to see it too. Campers, hikers, even passing drivers who stopped to listen when the air grew still. They described the same thing, the light, the hum, the flicker of movement along the old track. Some said the train appeared only to those who carried guilt. Others claimed it came for those who'd lost someone and couldn't let go. A railway historian once tried to explain it. He said it was probably swamp gas or light refracting off the river. He stayed by the tracks one night to prove it. His recorder captured only one thing, a single, steady sound of wheels grinding softly against steel. When he listened closer, just before the sound faded, he swore he heard something else, voices, low, distant, layered, passengers murmuring. A faint cough, the closing of a compartment door. He never returned to Marin Falls. The locals say the Silver Veil isn't trapped, it's just unfinished. That maybe it never crashed at all. Maybe it simply kept going, into a place where time doesn't follow. And every few years it finds its way back, retracing the tracks of a journey it never got to complete. Sometimes when the fog grows heavy and the night stands still, you can see the faint shimmer of lights weaving through the valley. If you listen closely, the whistle sounds not sharp but tired, like a sigh that's been waiting too long. And maybe, if you're standing there with your heart open and your grief unspoken, you'll feel the ground tremble beneath your feet. A reminder that some journeys never really end. They just change tracks. And as the whistle fades into the dark, Marin Falls sleeps again, cradled by the quiet, haunted by the hum of something still traveling, forever on its way home. There is a place where the river bends like a sleeping serpent, and the willows dip their branches low enough to brush the water. The people who live near it call the place Hollow's End, a name soft, enough to sound forgotten, yet full enough to hold its secret. No one remembers how the town began, only that it has always been there, quiet, veiled in mist, its houses leaning close as if whispering. The kind of town where time moves slower, where dusk feels endless, and where sometimes, when the night is kind, she appears. They call her the girl from Hollow's End. The stories never agree on what she looks like. Some say she's no older than 16, her hair long and pale like the fog. Others swear she's grown, her eyes calm and knowing, as if she's seen 100 years come and go. But they all agree on one thing, her dress. A faded blue, the color of the river under moonlight. Barefoot, always barefoot. Walking along the water's edge as though the earth itself knows her name. The first mention of her comes from a diary. found in the attic of an old riverside home. It belonged to a girl named Clara Wren, dated 1912. Her handwriting trembled with fear and fascination. "She was there again tonight," Clara wrote. "Standing by the water. I could see the reflection, but not the face. I called out, but my voice went nowhere." Weeks later, Clara disappeared. They found her shoes neatly placed beside the riverbank. Her diary left open to the last page. Nothing else. Years passed, and the stories spread like whispers through generations. Travelers would stop at the local inn, unaware of the legend, until the townsfolk would gently warn them, "Don't walk the river road after midnight. Not because she'll harm you, but because she might speak. And if she does, you'll never stop hearing her." Those who've met her describe the same feeling, an aching calm. She doesn't frighten them. She makes them remember. One man, a soldier who'd returned from war, claimed she spoke his mother's name, one he hadn't heard in years. Another, a grieving widow, said the girl took her hand and whispered, "He's waiting." She's been seen in rain and fog, in full moonlight and mist so thick you can barely see your breath. Always by the river, always alone. And yet no one who's seen her feels afraid for long. Only a strange, heavy peace, like being held by something both real and not. Some believe she was once a girl who drowned there, a tragedy the town buried along with her name. Others say she's something older. The spirit of the river itself, wearing a face we can understand. But there's another story, one not told as often. It's said that Hollow's End was once two towns divided by the river. Long ago, during a terrible storm, the bridge that connected them collapsed, taking an entire family with it. Only one child survived, a girl in a blue dress who washed up on the far bank. She was found dazed, whispering that she'd seen the lights beneath the water, lanterns, glowing deep below, guiding her back to shore. For years, she would walk the river each night, leaving flowers by the current, until one evening she too vanished. Now the flowers still appear, fresh, floating gently downstream at dawn. No one leaves them. No one sees who does, but every bloom carries the same scent. Soft and sweet like something from another time. If you stand on the bridge that crosses Hollow's End, and you let the night breathe around you, you might feel the air shift. The ripples may widen, the willows may stir, and for a moment, you'll see her there, standing still, her reflection trembling like a heartbeat on the water. She won't speak unless you need her to, and when she does, her voice isn't a sound at all. It's a feeling, like forgiveness, like the quiet that comes after tears. They say she appears only to those carrying sorrow too heavy to hold, to help them set it down, to take a piece of it back into the river, where all lost things eventually go. And when she fades, as the dawn begins to silver the trees, she leaves behind a stillness so deep it feels sacred. A reminder that not every haunting is meant to frighten. Some come only to heal what we've forgotten to grieve. So if you ever find yourself by the river at Hollow's End and the fog drifts close, and the water hums with something almost human, don't run. Just listen. Let the quiet reach you. Because maybe, just maybe, the girl in blue isn't lost at all. Maybe she's still walking, guiding others home. And as the first light touches the river, the town exhales. The story once again returns to silence. And now the night grows still again. The stories have been told, their echoes drifting through the air like smoke after a candle has gone out. The house on Old Pine Road still breathes in the dark. The lantern man's glow still sways in the fog. The church bells of Red Hollow still hum their lonely prayer. The Silver Veil still rides its endless tracks through the mist. And somewhere, quietly, endlessly, the girl from Hollow's End still walks beside the river. They are pieces of something older than fear. They are the gentle reminders that the world remembers everything. Every love that lingered, every sorrow that refused to fade, every voice that once called out into the dark and was answered. In every small town, there's a silence that holds shape, a silence that belongs to those who came before. We hear it in creaking floorboards, in the sigh of old trees, in the distant hum of trains that never arrive. We hear it not because it wants to scare us, but because it wants to remind us that every life leaves a mark, even if time pretends to erase it. The ghosts in these stories are not monsters. They are memories, echoes of tenderness, regret, love, and longing, trapped not by cruelty but by care. They linger because they still have something to say, And if you listen closely, you might find that their voices sound familiar. Maybe they're not just haunting the places we've left behind. Maybe they're haunting the places inside us that still ache to remember. So tonight, as you lie beneath the weight of your own quiet, let these stories fade softly into your dreams. Let them hum beneath your heartbeat, low and steady like footsteps in an empty hallway. And when the dark feels heavier than usual, remember this: every shadow comes from something that once held light. If these stories carried you closer to sleep, let this channel stay beside you too. A companion for the quiet hours when the world slows, and all that remains is the sound of your own breath and the distant whisper of the past. For in every still corner of the earth, and in every still corner of the heart, the night remembers. And in remembering, it keeps us all alive.